Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
New look, Naruto? The boy in question just shrugged as he sat on the bench that was to serve as their meeting place. Team 10 was meeting for the first time today. At least in full. I guess. Kiba snorted at the answer. That bastard Sasuke must be rubbing off on you. He drew a chuckle from the blonde. The blonde laughed louder when a fist met Kiba's head with a smack. Don't talk about Sasuke-kun like that, Kiba. The boy was left rubbing his head in pain as Akamaru growled at the girl from his position in the boy's lap. It wasn't all that menacing. The fact that any of them could throw the dog with one hand lessened the effect. Ino, it's too early to be so loud, Naruto complained. He still wasn't fully awake yet. The filing of his paperwork had lulled the normally alert boy back into his normal morning state of mind. If the Hokage had to file that kind of crap on a daily basis, he wondered why he had ever wanted the job. It just wasn't worth it. Pfft, you sound like that lazy-ass Shikamaru. That's not gonna fly. The girl had her hands on her hips in front of the two boys. She glared almost menacingly. Now that we're a team, you lazy asses are gonna have to step it up. 4 head girls on Sasuke-kun's team, and I'll be damned if I let her win just because of that. The girl was on a roll, but Naruto couldn't quite grasp her thought process. It was all one big jumble. Ino? How does our laziness translate to you losing, whatever it is you might lose, he asked, genuinely perplexed. Kiba seemed to share his confusion, as the boy blinked incoherently while rubbing his head. Sasuke-kun, idiot. Sakura is in prime position to get his attention by being on his team, Ino said in a voice that clearly indicated that the point was obvious. That means that I'm gonna have to work twice as hard to get him as before. That means that you two slackers are gonna have to pull your own weight. Kiba had regained his wits. What little of them he had to begin with. All-around nice guy he might be, but he wasn't his sharpest. So we have to not slack off so that you can beat Sakura? Naruto was still confused as well. The girl made no sense. Exactly. I'm gonna have to be twice as strong, beautiful, and amazing than I am now if I want to get Sasuke. You two can't help with the last two, but I'm not gonna be dragged down in training by you two idiots, so get it together. Naruto quickly shushed Kiba. This could work to his advantage and he wouldn't let the Inuzuka spoil it by being his usual loudmouth self. So you need us to help you get stronger so that you can get Sasuke's attention? Yes. She seemed so pleased that he had finally gotten his point. Well, that shouldn't be a problem. I need to get strong enough to kick that bastard's ass anyways. Naruto smirked lightly at the girl's outraged expression at his term for the Uchiha. You've got a deal, Ino. Unless Kiba's got a problem? Eyes shifted to the dog ninja. He snarled. As if I'd let you get ahead of me, Naruto. By the time we're done, you'll be having to contend with me and that prick. So we're all in agreement, Naruto said before Ino could castrate Kiba. The two nodded distractedly. Both were glaring daggers at each other. Naruto barely kept the victorious smirk from his face. Motivation had been his sole concern coming into this team as well. Ino had spent most of her academy time competing with Sakura in various childish pursuits, not the least of which was Sasuke. Kiba had been a slacker nearly on the level of Shikamaru. He wasn't about to be held back by either of them anyway, but having them properly motivated would be infinitely easier. Who knew Ino's stupid crush could be so useful? He did take offense to being called a slacker, however. He wasn't quite sure where she got off referring to him as such. Did his place as second in the class mean nothing to the girl? Honestly, he got no respect. The girl in question plopped herself down in the space between him and Kiba. She smiled sweetly. So, now that we're all a team, we should get to know each other, she declared. Naruto wondered at her mood shifts. One moment she was trying to intimidate the two of them into not slacking off, the next she was downright pleasant. Girls, he thought with exasperation. So troublesome, he mimicked his Nara friend. Well, that sounds like a good idea, a new voice piped up. The smell of cigarettes assaulted their collective nostrils and their eyes watered as smoke was blown in their faces. A big man clad in a standard Jonin uniform stood in front of Team 10. The only item out of the ordinary on the Jonin was a white sash that hung at his waist. I'll go first. I'm Sarutobi Asuma and I'm in charge of Team 10 from now on. Asuma smirked amidst the coughs. I'm going to be tough on you lot, so get ready. What did you do that for? Kiba asked indignantly. Naruto winced in sympathy for the boy. His heightened sense of smell would have made the entrance nearly unbearable. That stings. The large man laughed. He was one of the biggest men Naruto had ever seen. Most shinobi were more compact. Didn't I just say that I was going to be tough? Don't start crying on me already, I might just fail you here. Naruto's attention was grabbed. Fail? What did you mean? Asuma just laughed some more. Ah, that's right, they don't tell you guys that sort of stuff. We'll get to that later though. Now, introductions. He blew smoke in their faces again, but Naruto shielded himself with a hand. How about you first? He pointed to Ino. She coughed. My name's Yamanaka Ino, she squeaked out. She coughed again. That's it? Sarutobi questioned. What about likes, dislikes, dreams for the future? We're teammates now, you have to share that kind of information. Naruto noted that the man hadn't bothered to reveal his likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future. His interest was piqued. The man was shrewder than he let on. Ino huffed. I like origami, tending flowers, and Sasuke-kun, of course. I hate loud idiots and lazy idiots. The girl sent a pointed look at Kiba. I also hate Sakura. My dreams for the future are to be a strong ninja like my dad, and to land Sasuke-kun. Naruto barely withheld a snort. Sasuke would be thrilled to know that his fangirls treated him like an object. It'd make his day. Well, that's nice. How about you, with the dog? Asuma did his best to look interested. Naruto sympathized with him. Kiba straightened himself. The name's Inosuke Kiba. I like Akamaru here, my family, hot home-cooked meals, and hotter girls. Asuma nodded in appreciation of the last point while Ino scowled. I dislike bad smells, people I can't beat up, and arrogant assholes. Ino's scowl morphed into a glare at him for his indirect reference to Sasuke. Naruto wondered what it said about the girl that she automatically connected a reference to assholes to Sasuke. Even then, she was still obsessed with him. My dreams for the future are to lead my clan and prove that the Inuzuka are just as good as everyone else. Asuma nodded in acceptance of the introduction. And the last? Naruto straightened. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. I like training, ramen, and my old sensei. I dislike idiots and laziness. My dream, my goal, is to someday be able to contend with S-rank shinobi, he finished with his head held high. Blue eyes bore into brown as he dared his sensei to mock his proclamation. Asuma's eyes were appraising as he observed Naruto. A lofty goal, but something to strive for, I suppose. His eyes shifted to take in the entire team. He smiled once more, blowing smoke into the faces of the three genin again. The smile widened as they all covered their faces, having anticipated the move. They were learning. Well then, this is the time when most sensei give a test of some sort, in order to judge whether their genin are ready to actually be genin. Kiba looked confused, Ino scared, and Naruto determined. That's right, Asuma continued. You're not officially genin until you pass your sensei's test. But we passed the academy test. Ino exclaimed. Her indignation was matched by her teammates. Their sensei nodded. You did, but did you really think that all your classmates became genin? Even the ones with little to no practical skills? The bearded Jonin shook his head. Only 2/3 of the graduates actually make genin, in most cases. Sometimes there is an exceptional class where more pass, but not often. The failed genin return to the Reserve Academy, where they are put through an accelerated program that churns out capable, if not exceptional ninja. Asuma leaned against a nearby tree as he explained his position. In any event, that's where the sensei's test comes in. The Jonin smirked at the expressions on his students' faces. They all looked horrified of failing. I'm a bit different from most Jonin in this case. I don't believe that a test, no matter how complex and tested, can really determine how effective a group of genin can be. You guys have too much depth for something so simple to work, he said. So, as of now, you're all on probation. Naruto raised both eyebrows in question. What the hell did probation mean? That means that you'll function as a standard 3-man cell for the time period of 1 month. We'll train together, take missions, and do everything else expected of a 3-man cell, the smoker elaborated. At the end of 1 month, I'll decide whether you all pass or fail. I suggest you learn to work together, it's an all or nothing affair. If one of you fails, everyone does. But that's not fair. Naruto burst out. He was already entertaining the nightmare of being held back. Motivation or not, humility or not, Naruto knew that both Kiba and Ino weren't on his level. He had goals to achieve. He had to survive. Being held back couldn't happen. Asuma adopted a serious expression. Life isn't fair, Uzumaki. You ought to learn that. Naruto caught the deeper meaning behind the words. He berated himself mentally. When had his life ever been fair? That truth had made itself even more known a few nights ago. It made no sense that it would start being so now. You're all dismissed for the day, Asuma continued. I understand that some of you have yet to properly file your paperwork. Kiba and Ino winced sheepishly while Naruto straightened in satisfaction. I suggest you go do that. Be at Training Ground 10 at 8 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. The 3 genin waited in anticipation for some other proclamation, but it never came. Instead, Asuma simply walked off, cigarette in mouth. The new genin exchanged looks. An unspoken message was passed. They weren't going to fail, no matter what. Naruto nodded to the other 2, and walked off toward his apartment. He would grab a quick lunch and go out to train. Maybe he would find Guy and Lee if they weren't on a mission. Surely Guy would have some information to give on Sarutobi Asuma. He was halfway to his apartment when a hand on his shoulder stopped him cold. He nearly had a heart attack. He hadn't heard or sensed anyone come up behind him. Asuma chuckled lightly at his student's reaction to his presence. Calm down, Naruto. It's only me. You in the habit of creeping up on people? Naruto asked snidely. Asuma only laughed. He seemed to do that a lot. Sometimes, he answered. He took a drag on his cigarette. Walk with me for a minute. Naruto obliged. A few moments passed before the man spoke again. You're quite the enigma. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Happy as can be most of the time, but you get serious when it counts. You were the dead last in your class for nearly a year during your first year at the academy, but then something changed. You train with Uchiha Sasuke on a regular basis? Naruto was thrown by the sudden question. The man seemed to be in the habit of keeping him off balance. Yes, he answered. He was unaware just how much that told the Jonin about him. Training with the #1 rookie spoke volumes about his skill that no grades could properly convey. That was doubly so, considering Sasuke's own skill. Asuma nodded. Guy mentioned as much. Naruto's eyes widened. He also said that you train with him and his student Lee on a regular basis. Naruto nodded at the unspoken question. That's interesting. Naruto was confused. He didn't like the feeling. Why are you asking me this? The smoker shrugged. I make it a point to get to know who I'm going to be training. Then why aren't you talking to Ino and Kiba too? Why hadn't he brought this up during the meeting? Who says I'm not? What? Naruto thought. It showed on his face, if Asuma's chuckle was any indication. You're an interesting person, Naruto. I'm just trying to get a read on you. Naruto bobbed his head. It made sense. He supposed that he should be flattered that his sensei would take such an interest in him. It was certainly more than his academy instructors had done. Back on topic, where exactly are you hiding the weights that I know you're wearing? Being a student of Guy, even part-time, means that you probably wear them. The man gestured to Naruto's outfit in question. There weren't many places where he could hide the weights. The boy was wearing a forest green shirt and black shorts that fell to the knee. He had his customary black shinobi sandals, and his legs were taped to the very top of his claves. A black band with a snap button held them in place. Naruto gestured to the bandages on his legs. Resistance seals. They were a graduation present from Guy-sensei. Asuma squinted. He could barely make out the seals inscribed on the bandages, and he was looking for them. He nodded. A good idea, weights can be cumbersome for someone your age. The seals would allow for Naruto to reap the optimum benefits of weight training by having the seals absorb a fixed amount of chakra from every movement. The chakra would then be reflected back on his bones and muscles, allowing for Naruto's strength to grow as the chakra pushed on the muscles. It was less damaging than the weights that he had been using before, which had been more suited to taijutsu specialists. There was the added benefit of being less cumbersome as well. A chakra flex in the legs disengages them, Naruto told his new sensei. He noticed that they had reached a popular barbecue restaurant. Asuma led him inside. Naruto hoped the man was paying. A good design, the jonin said simply, as the two were led to a table. Naruto noted that no one so much as looked at him funny when he was in the presence of the jonin. It was nice. He wondered if it was because of the man's rank or surname. You can channel chakra to your legs? He asked. Naruto nodded. I had to learn the tree climbing exercise in order to do some less chakra-heavy techniques. It had been a must for him to learn the bunshin. His chakra reserves were far too big for the technique under normal circumstances. Asuma looked surprised. Where did you come by the exercise? It's not common knowledge in academy students. Archive, Naruto said simply as a plate of assorted meats was placed in front of them. They hadn't even ordered. His eyes found Asuma's, and he saw that he was smiling at the waitress. He must have been a regular. Ah, that explains it. Asuma had turned back to his genin. Not enough academy students use that resource. Good on you. He placed the pieces of meat on the grill in front of them. That puts you ahead of your teammates, then. I'll have to start with chakra control then. He sighed. What a drag. Naruto snickered. Asuma raised an eyebrow at the youth. They each ate their meat. It was quite tasty when not burned. Naruto ended up mooching his sensei's meat once his meager grilling skills were exposed. So, Naruto broke the companionable silence. Why exactly are we on probation? Were you just too lazy to come up with a test? He was starting to see how his sensei operated. The man was laid back enough that Naruto wouldn't put it past him to abandon the notion of a test simply out of laziness. The bearded man chuckled at his student's cheek. They would get along fine. Partly. I don't really think that three genin who haven't worked together in the past can be accurately judged by some contrived exam. Most of the tests revolve around teamwork, and getting three genin to work together right off the bat isn't easy. Seeing how you three work together over the span of a month gives me a much more accurate view of you. Naruto nodded. But why? A group of three can learn to work together in a month. Doesn't that defeat the purpose of the test if you just pass them at the end? The system seemed to be designed to allow the team to pass. Maybe, but you'd be surprised how hard it is to get along with your teammates on a day-to-day basis. I've had a couple of teams that can't handle it. At the end, you're either a team or you have a few more skills to go to the reserve program with. It was a good system. Naruto nodded thoughtfully. How'd you get permission, though? A group of 3 going to the reserves a month late can't be good for organization. Being the son of the Hokage has some perks, Asuma said simply. Naruto wasn't sure, but he looked less than pleased with the notion that his name got him special treatment, despite his willingness to exploit it. Naruto knew the feeling. Anyway, be ready for tomorrow, Naruto. Asuma dropped the appropriate money on the table before walking out. He left a contemplative Naruto in his wake. Evenings in Konoha were Naruto's favorite time by far. Many wondered why Fire Country had its name, given its forested landscape. Those who did only had to spend a day in the sun to have their wonders assuaged. While Naruto had never been out of the country, he highly doubted that he'd ever find a place quite like Konoha. When the sun began to disappear behind the eastward-facing Hokages, Konoha came to life. From the lights of the shops to the lantern-lit streets, Konoha in the evening was a beautiful sight to behold. Bathed in moonlight under a clear, starlit sky, Konoha exuded an orange glow from nearly every corner. It was a sight to behold from on high, and it was this that originally led Naruto to his favorite haunt. The top of the Yandame's head. Much to the blonde's chagrin, at the moment, he wasn't at his favorite hangout spot. He was dragging himself through the streets on the way to one of his least favorite activities. Shopping. In all honesty, he'd rather stab himself in the eye rather than deal with the great village's shopkeepers. They had been the bane of his existence until he had reached the academy. They had then been replaced with the Chunin instructors, but they had remained quite the vexing problem. A brave few had refused him service in his youth, denying him the essentials needed to survive, but that had stopped once he had complained to the Hokage about mean storekeepers. He had had noticeably less trouble after that. Regardless, they had done their level best to make his life difficult soon after. While none had outright refused him, though some small shops still did, they had managed to discourage Naruto's patronage. Higher prices, dirty looks, poor treatment, and more had greeted the whiskered blonde whenever he walked into a shop, and slowly, Naruto had learned to adapt. Being a scavenger hadn't been fun, but it had been necessary. Stealing had become a regular part of the boy's day for a time. He often wondered at the villagers' stupidity. They were perfectly willing to believe him a great demon hell-bent on destroying them all when it suited them, but when it didn't, he was just an idiotic nuisance. It was the only way Naruto could explain how he had managed to get away with stealing as much as he had in his youth, as he had been far from the competent genin he now was. It was like the villagers' opinions shifted whenever they felt like it, and they adapted to their situation. As annoying as it was, it had made life easier for Naruto, at least until he slipped up one day. 2 weeks and one official reprimand later, Naruto never let himself get caught stealing again. It was no easy task, given that all the shopkeepers stepped up their security and vigilance after that one time, but he had managed. It had even helped him with his skills in stealth. Stealing had been tough, and the results showed. It was no easy feat leading trained shinobi on village-wide chases, and Naruto had delighted in it for a few short months before the Uchiha massacre had wizened him up to the realities of life. Even so, he had managed to pull a few pranks on more than a few merchants after the fact. Watching the wealthy bastards wonder who stole their precious money and goods had been vindication of the highest level. It was even better when their attention eventually fell on him, and he could see how they so obviously wished that they could pin it on him. He had left no evidence of the fact, however. He'd be damned if he let the pricks ever get wind of him more than once. His waltz down memory lane halted as his body turned into a ninja supply shop. It was one that he frequented often, for he always needed supplies, and the owners didn't seem to mind him so much. They had immigrated after the Kyuubi attack and, while there was some stigma, they didn't have the loss of loved ones to pin on the beast in his gut. It helped that their merchandise was well made and priced pretty reasonably. Naruto gave a brief nod to the girl manning the counter as he picked up a basket. Wandering to the weapons section, Naruto perused the standard grade kunai and shuriken before picking out 2 full sets for himself. While not cheap, it was necessary, and the blonde had some money now that he was running constant D ranks with Team 10. He glanced over the sunbon needles and decided that he wouldn't splurge too much. While he had some serious pocket money, he still needed to use much of it for other essentials. He didn't really need sunbon anyway. His feet carried him to the clothing section, where Naruto's real objective laid. He had ripped another one of his trademark green shirts, and he was in short supply. He rounded a clothing rack moving toward the t-shirts when walked smack into his teammate. "Kami, Naruto, watch where you're going," Ino groused as she dusted herself off. Naruto huffed angrily. "I was watching. You were the one who couldn't take her eyes off the floor." "Pay attention to where you look in small spaces," he grumbled heatedly. The blonde girl just shook her head tiredly and waved him off. "Yeah, whatever, Naruto." She moved to walk away. Naruto's interest was piqued, warning bells sounding loud and clear in his mind. Ino would never let him off the hook like that. She always had to be right about small things like that, and there was no way that she would let it go so easily. "You all right?" he called to her back. He was concerned. Ino turned back to him and offered a small smile. Naruto realized how haggard the girl looked for the first time. That made no sense though, Asuma hadn't held training today. "Yeah, Naruto, I'm alright. Just tired." "You don't look alright," Naruto pointed out bluntly. Subtlety had never been his strong suit when it came to people. An angry look flashed through Ino's eyes for but a moment before it was gone. It was replaced by the same tired look she had before. "Asuma and I talked about some stuff today. Stuff about being a good kunoichi and all that, and he gave me a bunch of stuff to think about." Naruto didn't question why the girl would even bother telling him this. "Anything I can help with?" he asked immediately. "You know, we're teammates and all and friends, I guess, so if you need anything." He trailed off in his explanation, blushing slightly at the look his teammate was giving him. She looked to be sizing him up. A small smile made its way to her face. "I'm good, Naruto, but thanks anyway." "You're sure?" She nodded with a small snort. "I'm sure." Naruto scratched the back of his head, at a loss for words. Reassured and concern spent, the moment had just gotten awkward. "Well, I'll see you tomorrow then?" They had training in the morning. "Yeah," Ino said with a little giggle at his discomfort. He blushed lightly. "See you tomorrow." They went their separate ways, each with confused thoughts of the other blonde. The Sandame silently regarded his son. With his pipe in mouth and serious expression, he gave the appearance of a truly stern, wise leader. It was a well-cultivated and practiced image. His son, likewise, had his game face on, though it differed from his father's. Posture slouched slightly, Asuma gave the appearance of the perfectly laid back and lazy jonin. The image was completed by the cigarette perched at an angle in his mouth. It too was a cultivated image. Few people knew how intelligent and observant the chain smoker was. He intended to keep it that way. "You've had your month, what's your answer?" The Sandame's voice was gravelly and stern. Asuma knew that this would be all business. Just like it always was. He wasn't sure if he was truly sad about that. Team 10 has passed. They've showed the proper work ethic, teamwork, and cohesiveness that should be present in a genin team. Asuma was straight to the point and nearly monotonous. He exhaled a cloud of smoke, letting the aromas from the 2 tobaccos battle it out. The pipe tobacco was winning. And what of the 3 individually? They are remarkably similar in many ways. All 3 are loud, somewhat brash, and do nothing to hide their emotions from each other. Surprisingly enough, it translates to some pretty good teamwork. "It almost makes the bickering bearable," Asuma said dryly. His father winced in sympathy for him. He was familiar with the personalities of all 3. As it is, Naruto is the most mature of the 3, though you wouldn't know it initially. It's like the boy can flip a switch in his brain sometimes. It's taken some time, but both Kiba and Ino defer to him when they're making executive decisions on the missions. The elder Sarutobi nodded, his face pensive. Naruto has a natural charisma that can draw people to him. It hasn't had much opportunity to assert itself in the village, but there are examples. Uchiha Sasuke is the most visible. How goes the boy's progress? Asuma took a seat. It was neither offered nor asked for. His father didn't react visibly. As well as to be expected. I introduced the water walking exercise just last week, and he's still struggling with it. His chakra reserves work against him at this point, though they'll be a boon later. The Sandame sat back in his chair and digested the information. It wasn't much, but it provided some insight as to the abilities of the boy he had once called a surrogate grandson. Naruto had distanced himself from the Hokage a few months into his first year in the academy, incidentally right around the time of the Uchiha massacre. He had heard from Madogai that he had taken the boy on as a part-time student, and Sarutobi had been concerned initially. Guy was well known for his harsh training techniques, and the idea of Naruto training under the man had made Sarutobi wary. He had allowed it because the boy wasn't getting any real help from his academy instructors, and, short of Sarutobi outright ordering them, he wouldn't likely ever. The boy's time under Guy, sporadic that it was, had yielded results far greater than Sarutobi had initially dared to hope. The astounding progress was proof of the boy's innate talent and potential. The old man would be deluding himself if he wasn't happy for Naruto quite literally sticking it to his detractors in the academy. Young Irika had been quite shocked when Naruto had suddenly jumped from dead last to middle of the pack in a single month. The trend had continued until he was the number 2 in the class. He quickly forced his wandering mind back to his son. The man was sitting impatiently in his chair. The elderly man inwardly sighed at the deterioration of their relationship. It was too bad that Asuma had inherited his stubbornness. "You look like you want to say something." The chain smoker seemed to mull something over. Guy did the boy a service by helping him when he did. Taijutsu is something that takes years to learn well, and is best learned at a young age. Because of Guy's tutelage, Naruto won't really have to worry about his taijutsu for years. Never, if he keeps practicing with the man. Interesting, the Sandame interrupted. But I recall telling you much the same when you first took Team 10. The old man winced at his harsh tone, he couldn't help it sometimes. Asuma barely reined in his glare. In any event, with his taijutsu as solid as it is, he has time to fully turn his attention to ninjutsu, he continued as if his father hadn't interrupted. I want permission to teach him the basics of elemental manipulation. The Hokage was stunned, though he didn't show it. Elemental manipulation was a skill practiced and honed by Chunin. Most genin had neither the chakra reserves nor the proper basics to begin learning the art. The idea of teaching it to a genin was rare, if not unheard of. It had happened with exceptional genin in the past. Is he truly that exceptional? Asuma nodded without hesitation. He is. His taijutsu is good enough to be neglected right now, and his chakra reserves are large enough that it makes sense for him to begin. He was being somewhat modest for his student. The boy's reserves were the size of his own. Genjutsu will never be his forte, though he shows serious drive in learning how to become immune to them. And what of his other teammates? Will they suffer from the extra attention to young Naruto? The Hokage was cracking. Asuma knew he had his father right where he wanted him. He barely withheld a smirk of victory as he put the final nail in the coffin. Not at all. I intend to leave Naruto to study the art mostly on his own time. The pipe nearly fell out of Hiruzen's mouth. He had never heard such a thing before. And you expect him to complete it to a reasonable degree? To do so would take nearly prodigious skill with ninjutsu. From what I've been able to glean from the boy, he's already muscled his way through 2 or 3 Doton techniques. It's an element that I suspect isn't even his primary one. The satisfaction was evident in his voice. Indeed? The Sandime was being forced to re-evaluate much of what he thought he knew about the blonde boy. He knew that the boy was skilled, and would likely become even more so as time passes, but to have this kind of talent was beyond the scope of Saratobi's conceptions. For a newly minted genin to be able to use elemental ninjutsu, no matter how small, was incredible. It was the stuff of prodigies. Uchiha Sasuke had demonstrated the ability in his test with Hatake Kakashi, but that had almost been expected of the boy. The Uchiha were known for their battle prowess, and Sasuke was a genius even among them. For Naruto to show comparable skill, it was nearly mind-boggling. He couldn't help but be impressed, both by the facts and the reality that the boy had kept it hidden from so many people who, unbeknownst to Naruto, had been watching him quite closely. What, exactly, would your plan for Naruto entail? Asuma just smiled. You know, it honestly wasn't what I was expecting. Sasuke pulled out his trademark HN as a response. I mean, I expected that the whole aspects of team training could be boring, but deranked missions? They're a fucking embarrassment. Naruto said heatedly. HN. Sasuke casually slurped some more of his ramen. Just last week, we're babysitting for this woman, apparently had urgent business in Otafukugai, probably a gambling vacation to get away from her kids, and Kiba starts flipping out on the kids because they were trying to braid Akamaru's hair. Naruto threw his hands up in exasperation. He ends up chasing the 7-year-old, a 7-year-old girl, around the house for 5 minutes. Somehow, someway, he spilled new paint all over one of the rooms. Sasuke actually snickered at the blonde's predicament. He dares. Naruto thought violently. He continued in the same vein, doing his best to ignore his unsympathetic friend. The person tending the house comes back, he's pissed, and we have to repaint the whole room the same day. We didn't even get paid. Naruto trailed off with a grumble. That sounds like the mutt, Saki said simply. Any other worthy moments or note? Naruto shook his head as he finished his second bowl of ramen. Not really. It's been pretty dull otherwise. He perked up quickly. Though what Ino did to Kiba after that mission was downright vicious. Sasuke chuckled. Was that when she had him go around town in nothing but a pink dress for a day? Naruto nodded bemusedly. Yeah. You heard about that? The pink harpy was gushing about it for the 2 hours we sat waiting for Kakashi. Apparently the yellow harpy told her. Naruto chuckled in appreciation of their old nicknames for Sasuke's biggest fangirls. He took a little offense for Ino, though. Outside the presence of Sasuke and Sakura, she wasn't that bad. He would admit that he was warming to the girl. I heard that Hataki's always late. I guess there's truth to that. Sasuke nodded with a scowl. 2 to 3 hours. Every day. Naruto chortled. Sounds pretty bad. Asuma-sensei's never late. He didn't recoil at the heated glare that Sasuke sent his way. Served the bastard right for mocking him earlier. You don't know the half of it, Sasuke grumbled. Naruto nearly cracked up at the thought of Sasuke actually grumbling. Just when I was getting the timing right so I could show up a few minutes before he did, he actually shows up on time. I got an official reprimand for being late to a meeting, and I know he did it on purpose. Naruto couldn't help laughing at his friend's predicament. It was just too funny. Sucks, man. What about the rest of the bunch? They any good? Not a chance, idiot. Nara's lazier than Kakashi on his best day, and I can count the number of times that Sakura's done something useful on one hand. Yep, Sasuke was pissed. Between Nara's laziness, Kakashi's lateness, and Sakura's idiocy, we almost never train. You think you've got it bad, Dobe? We do nothing but deranked missions. I've taken to getting back into my old routine in the mornings, considering I've got nothing else to do. Damn, that sucked. Sasuke was somewhat famous for waking up at the crack of dawn to begin training. Naruto followed the boy's example, to a limited extent. Ouch. I take it you haven't learned much new, a team? Sasuke shrugged, his anger somewhat spent. Not much, but Kakashi tossed me a new katan jutsu last week. Probably compensation for everything. The only team training we do is taijutsu. I'm lucky if I get to spar with Kakashi." Naruto nodded to himself. He was likely learning more than he thought. He was likely getting some battle experience from sparring with a jonin like Kakashi. That and those eyes of his taught on their own. The blonde couldn't say that he learned all that much either. The gap in skill between him and his teammates was a virtual chasm, now that he could see it properly. As such, Asuma was stuck helping Ino and Kiba with their various deficiencies. Naruto was more than happy to note that they were becoming fewer and fewer. Regardless, Asuma had helped him with his chakra control in the last week, and had started him on some training with dual kunai. Naruto hoped that this would lead into the man teaching him how to fight with those trench knives of his. Naruto ended his musings as he heard Sasuke renew his grumbling. He shook his head. Team 7 must really be something special if Sasuke was this emotional about it. At least Nara has a brain hidden somewhere in that skull of his. I'm starting to think that Sakura has nothing but air between her ears. Book smart my ass, Sasuke griped. He took a long sip of his tea. Naruto nodded absently. Ino said that Sakura has some good chakra control. Maybe you could use that angle to get Kakashi to give some serious training? Sasuke shook his head. Already tried. All it accomplished was Kakashi having us do the tree climbing exercise for a week. He's still having Haruno do it on a regular basis. She's got fuck all chakra compared to everyone else, apparently. Whoa! Sasuke almost never cursed. It was beneath someone of such noble Uchiha blood, in the boy's mind. Damn! Naruto thought fast. Sasuke was liable to kill the pink-haired girl at this rate. Good chakra control is required of genjutsu specialist or medic nin, right? Maybe an offhand mention. Sasuke just sneered. She doesn't have the temperament or disposition for either. She's either pestering me or trying to kill Shikamaru for interfering in our conversations. What she is useless. Holy shit. No wonder he was so damn vicious in our spar. Sounds like she needs a good beating to set her straight. The Uchiha scoffed. Don't I know it, but Kakashi doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. Aside from chakra control, he's been drilling us on basics. I'm this close to going to the Hokage about it. He held his fingers about an inch apart. Yeah, Asuma-sensei's been doing basics too. Naruto carefully steered the conversation away from Sasuke's Team 7 woes. I don't know how Kiba managed to pass the academy without being able to hold a kunai right, but at least Ino has a solid grounding. I'm hoping Asuma-sensei starts moving us onto some actual ninjutsu, rather than just basics and strategy. The man had been pestering him to pick up shogi. Naruto still hadn't managed to plow through the rulebook. Damn, if that game wasn't complex. I forgot you had the yellow harpy on your team. He smirked slightly, his own woes forgotten at the moment. Naruto shook his head. She's not that bad, actually. She's actually pretty focused during training. He was happy to say that he had a newly budding friendship with his fellow blonde. She was surprisingly bearable around him these days. It was a pleasant change up from their academy days. Whatever you say, Dobe. Are you sure you aren't being a bit, soft with her? He smirked devilishly. After all, you know what they say, there's nothing so bad as something not so bad. Naruto scowled, though there was a distinct redness to his cheeks. Shut it, team. She's pretty decent, and I thought we agreed never to mention that again. Sasuke was the only one who knew that Naruto had nursed quite the silent affection for the blonde Yamanaka during their first years in the academy. It had lasted until she had started chasing after Sasuke like he was a piece of meat. I don't remember ever agreeing to anything, idiot. Naruto raised a challenging eyebrow. Oh? What about that whole agreement about me never mentioning anything to Kiba about you? And his SI-His smirk was triumphant as Sasuke slapped a hand over his mouth. Not a word. Sasuke growled. Of course. Hey chumps, I heard my name. Speak of the devil and he shall appear. Naruto smirked. Kiba had impeccable timing. Nothing to be bothered with, mutt. Sasuke recovered in the blink of an eye. Naruto here was going over your numerous deficiencies in training. Kiba just humphed. Bite me Uchiha, we both know that I can take either of you any day. You'd like to think that, wouldn't you, mutt? Kiba growled. Screw you, asshole. We both know I'm bigger and stronger than you. Sasuke's eyes gleamed. Maybe so, but everyone knows that you're lacking size where it counts. Naruto couldn't contain his laughter at Kiba's face as the insult sunk in. The raven-haired youth was being downright vicious today. Fuck you, Uchiha. I'll beat your ass. Akamaru barked along with his partner. Settle down, children, Naruto managed around his laughter. He mentally patted himself on the back for diffusing the situation in such a cool way. We're all friends here. Yeah, screw both of you, Kiba grumbled. HN. Sasuke was back to his aloof self, it seemed. Naruto shrugged. What are you doing around here, Kiba? Didn't think you ate ramen. I don't. My mom says that stuff'll stunt my growth. I'm not exactly lacking size, he sent a pointed glare at the smirking Sasuke, but you can never be too careful. I was looking for you actually. We've got training in 30. Naruto assumed that he didn't want to show up to the training ground with only Ino there to meet him. Their arguments were becoming somewhat legendary. He checked the time. Shit, gotta go Sasuke. Whatever, dobe. Just pay for your share. Naruto dropped the appropriate money on the countertop. Later, team. See ya old man. Come back soon, old man Tucci called from the back. Naruto would make a point to talk to him and his daughter the next time he came by the stand. He always enjoyed the simple conversations he had with his first friends. Naruto and Kiba ambled through the early afternoon traffic in an amiable silence. Naruto took his time seeing the sights and basking in the non-attention he got. The forehead protector was a nice deterrent for the villagers' glares. Kiba spent his time playing with Akamaru and leering at the passing village girls and women. Honestly, Kiba, you're gonna get slapped if you keep that up. Damn hormonal genin. Naruto could appreciate a fine specimen, but Kiba was just ridiculous. Please, Naruto, a woman appreciates guys checking her out. It's flattering. It's not flattering when your drool gets on their shoes. Kami only knows how you turned out, how you did with your mother and sister, Naruto argued. Bah, you wouldn't know the first thing to do with a woman, Naruto. That may be true, but if I watch you long enough, I'll end up knowing what not to do. Naruto smirked. That's got to count for something. Kiba glared. There was no real heat behind it, though. I don't know why you doubt me. You and Ino both. You two deserve each other for all the crap you give me. Naruto chuckled. He might make a pass if he thought he had a shot with the other blonde. Kiba, we're 12. No one our age is an expert on women. Least of all you. I beg to differ, Naruto. Chicks are drawn to me like a moth to flame. More like fleas to a dog, Kiba. Naruto laughed outright at Kiba's outraged expression. How do you reckon they're so attracted to you? Kiba puffed up. I've got 2 words for you, animal magnetism. Naruto snorted. And I've got 2 words for you, body odor. It's probably why all these nice people are giving us such a wide berth. Naruto gestured to the gap they were creating in the midday crowds. The reality was that the gap was because most people were giving Naruto a wide berth, but if a little misdirection got Kiba to shower more, who cared? Fuck you, Naruto. The boy in question just laughed his way to the training ground. When they arrived at training ground 10, the 2 boys were surprised to see their remaining squad mates already there. Ino had her hands locked in the rat seal. Asuma looked pensive, though his gaze flickered around the clearing. His eyes didn't even register the arrival of Naruto and Kiba. Abruptly, Ino dropped the seal and Asuma reverted to normal. Well, the girl asked expectantly. Asuma nodded to the girl. Impressive. Just make sure to be throwing your kunai and shuriken in a way for the clones to mimic you. Ino nearly squealed in delight. Are we late, Asuma-sensei? Kiba asked. Asuma turned to regard his other two students. The Jonin checked the time. Nope, you're right on time. I was just helping Ino-chan out with a few techniques. Naruto was interested. Anything for the rest of us? He asked. The bearded man shook his head. Nothing you'd be interested in, Naruto. Genjutsu, he elaborated at the look Naruto sent him. The blonde boy scowled. It wasn't his fault he had no real aptitude for the illusion art. In any event, Asuma began anew, lighting a cigarette up. We have a new play for the playbook. The playbook was the group of team maneuvers that Team 10 had drilled. He formed a strange hand seal. The team of genin watched in awe as a duplicate of their sensei appeared in a puff of smoke. It was a corporal clone, too. Naruto could see the shadow. For the next hour, you three will be attempting to entrap and take out my Kage Bunshin here. Ino, if you could explain the purpose behind the technique you were just practicing? Of course, sensei. She approached the two boys. Naruto could see that the girl was excited about having learned a new technique. The genjutsu is called Kasumi Jusha no Jutsu. It creates a group of imaginary clones to surround the enemy and trick them into thinking our numbers are a lot bigger than they are. For the next hour, the three genin wandered about the forest surrounding the training ground, attempting to subdue Asuma's shadow clone. They finally managed it at the end, due to Ino's effective use of genjutsu, Kiba's tracking abilities, and Naruto's linear speed. The rest of practice was spent sparring Ino versus Kiba, and Asuma versus Naruto, and practicing chakra control. Both Ino and Kiba were struggling with the water walking exercise. In between Naruto learning to use dual blades, Asuma taught him the basics of the Shunshin, Naruto having the required control to attempt it. It was far from simple. The deranked ninjutsu required a fine balance of chakra channeled to the legs, or else the jutsu would implode on the user. It was similar to the kawarimi in that sense. The whole process needed to be drilled into Naruto's head before he could attempt it. That, combined with the ungodly amount of concentration the jutsu took to use well, meant that Naruto was far from mastering the jutsu. He knew that the jutsu would be worth its weight in gold. Moving through the village at high speeds would not only cut down his travel time, and it would limit the amount of glares the villagers could send his way. That, and running through the streets was so civilian. It was unbefitting of someone such as him. Naruto, stay back a minute, will you? Asuma asked at the end of the practice. Ino and Kiba were limping their way out of the clearing. Naruto was about ready to do the same. He was tired, sore, cut up, and his chakra coils ached like nobody's business. What's up, sensei? Asuma rummaged around in his utility pouch for a moment before withdrawing a small square of paper and a storage scroll. I have a side project for you. Elemental manipulation. Naruto knew his eyes were the size of saucers, but he didn't care. Sensei, he questioned in disbelief. Isn't that a skill reserved for Chunin and Jonin? It is. The Jonin had an immensely satisfied look on his face from having stunned his student. I think, and my father agrees with me, that it is something worthwhile for you to learn. Naruto blinked, twice. From what information he could glean about the elusive art, it was attempted by Chunin in order to become more proficient in ninjutsu. It was a well-known requirement for most Jonin to have mastered, or at least have use of, two elements. For a genin to begin training in the art. Not that I'm complaining, sensei, but why are you teaching me this? It's a skill for Chunin and Jonin for a reason. Naruto was confused, and he didn't like it. I've never known you to doubt your own skills, Naruto. Why start now? Asuma looked genuinely puzzled. No. I'm not doubting myself. It's just that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A genin learning elemental ninjutsu is almost unheard of, Naruto countered. He felt that he was arguing against himself, but he wanted to know why. The man had to have a reason. Asuma nodded sagely, taking a drag on his cigarette. Almost unheard of. You seem to be pretty well informed. Do you know of any others who learned this skill at your rank? Naruto shrugged. Hatake Kakashi, Uchiha Itachi, the yandere, was reputed to have used elemental techniques at a young age. He trailed off. Where was this going? Asuma nodded with a pleased expression, inwardly impressed with the depth of his student's knowledge. He wondered where it came from. Naruto wasn't particularly academically inclined. All exceptional ninja in their youth. They all became more exceptional as they got older. That was quite the veiled compliment. You're putting me in with the likes of those three? The chain smoker shrugged. I'm saying that you've got potential. Your abilities with taijutsu place well above your peers. Your genjutsu is weak, but you can both detect and dispel most ordinary illusions. You've managed a few rudimentary doton techniques, and that monster in your gut pretty much ensures that you've got some huge chakra reserves. The man threw his cigarette to the ground and stamped it out. I'm not saying this for it to go to your head, Naruto, but your ninjutsu capabilities are nearly unheard of in a genin. Ninjutsu and taijutsu are going to be your bread and butter, and your taijutsu is good enough, and will keep getting better, so we can leave it be for the moment. Naruto was nodding his head along with his sensei's assessment of his abilities. It was flattering to say the least. It was certainly nice to have his skills validated. Even more so, the waves of pride that were coming off Asuma were making him feel happier than he had in a long time. He wouldn't let him down. What do I have to do? He asked. Asuma's face lit up. Just channel some chakra into this paper, here. He handed over the square. Naruto focused intently on the white square, and channeled his chakra. He was notably surprised when it split in two even halves. Asuma seemed even more delighted than before. Well, that makes this even better, he said to himself. At Naruto's questioning face, he continued, the paper you just used is specially cared for and soaked with chakra. It allows for ninja to determine their elemental affinity simply by channeling chakra into it. If the paper burns, it's fire; if it crinkles, it's lightning; if it gets wet, it's water; if it crumbles, it's earth; and if it splits, dash. It's wind, Naruto finished in an excited whisper. Aren't you wind-natured, sensei? I am, he confirmed. That makes this all the easier once you complete the proper exercises. I'll be able to teach you plenty of futon techniques. You're lucky too, that I'm your sensei. Wind isn't really common in Konoha, and I can only think of one or two other users who are any good. Naruto was excited, he couldn't deny that. Here he was, a genin, learning elemental manipulation from a man who could teach him to harness his affinity better than everyone else in the village. Things were looking up. You mentioned exercises? Ah, yes. He handed over the storage scroll. In here, you'll find a collection of exercises for becoming more proficient with every element. They're considered the basic exercises that every ninja should know about their element before attempting to learn elemental ninjutsu. Without them, trying out techniques is like taking a shot in the dark. Naruto's eyebrows were in his hairline. The fact that you can use two techniques, both of them outside your primary affinity, speaks of the potential I was talking about earlier. So, I've got huge-ass chakra reserves, ninjutsu talent, and potential beyond the norm. Fantastic. He barely kept himself from fist-pumping. It was about time things started getting easier for him. This is going to be a side project for you, so that means that you won't be working on it so much in practice with the rest of the team, but feel free to come to me with any questions. Naruto just nodded his head. Asuma ruffled his hair affectionately as he lit up another cigarette on his way out of the clearing. Try to enjoy yourself. Thanks, sensei, Naruto responded weakly. He absently opened the scroll. Kanji representing wind, earth, fire, lightning, and water were arrayed before him. A quick application of chakra later, and the wind element was opened. Leaf splitting exercise, interesting. Standard disclaimer, I own nothing save my plot and any OCs that might run rampant through the story. I know you're not eyeing that last piece. An eyebrow was raised in challenge to the proclamation. Oh? And what if I am? You shouldn't be. That piece is mine. A snort. Says who? First come, first serve is what I say. Isn't that right, Akamaru? Yipping greeted the statement. That's right. Looks like you're outvoted. Naruto shook his head. He has no say in this and you know it. Kiba growled, who says he has no say? Well, it's not his food now, is it? Why should he have a say in something that has no place in this argument? Kiba shook his head. He's a part of the team too, and this is a team matter. Naruto aped at the dog ninja. How is this a team matter? It's a piece of meat. Kiba shrugged. Well, Sensei's paying, and Ino's eating too. Why shouldn't they have a say in this? Maybe because Ino's already finished the piece you two are so intent on squabbling over, Asuma drawled lazily. He enjoyed the immature squabble between his team members as much as any sensei could, but it got out of hand sometimes. What? Came the simultaneous near screech of his two male students. They both turned incredulous eyes on the third member of Team 10. The girl sat casually in the booth they occupied, opposite both boys, and simply stared back at the two genin passively. I figured that I would solve the problem on my own, said responded with a casual shrug, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. Why? That was Naruto. Neither of you were getting anywhere with your discussion. But you can't do that. That was Kiba. The blonde girl tossed him a smirk. I thought it was first come, first serve, she threw his earlier phrase back at him. Kiba just sputtered incoherently for a moment before settling on a glare that sent Ino into peals of laughter. Naruto just shook his head at the unfairness of it all. Pfft, whatever. I got a split anyway, Kiba grunted. Thanks for the meal, sensei. No problem, Kiba, Asuma said. You wouldn't be going home, would you? Yeah, why? Thought it'd be a good idea to talk to your mom about that taijutsu training I recommended for you. Kiba grimaced. Yeah, she wasn't all too happy about you trying to get me to move up in the clan style. Asuma tilted his head to the right, the picture of boredom. That's why I should talk to her personally. Let her know my side of the story. Kiba shrugged once more. Sure. I guess you can come along. Don't blame me if she yells at you though. The boy shuddered comically. Asuma chuckled at his student's expense. I think I'll live. He turned to Naruto and Ino. Just tell them to put it on my tab, guys. I'll see you for training tomorrow. Bye, sensei. Later. Kiba and Asuma disappeared through the front door of the grilling establishment Naruto had lunched at with Asuma on the first day of his tenure on Team 10. Sensei and student left the remaining members behind. So? Naruto began after a few moments' silence. So, Ino responded with a slight smile. How's life? Naruto asked awkwardly. Ino giggled at his awkwardness. It was cute, in its own way. She'd have to find a way to relieve him of that somehow. It's all good, Naruto. How's yours? The boy shrugged. Can't complain really. Training in between team training and not much else. Ino nodded along with him. You know, you never really explained it. That got Naruto's attention. Explained what? That dream of yours. S-rank, she asked, her gaze focused intently on him. Naruto's eyes widened and he shifted a little uncomfortably in his seat. How did one explain that they had a group of likely S-class shinobi after their head? It wasn't really conversation-worthy material. At least not for Genin. Well, you remember how I used to always shout about wanting to be Hokage? Ino nodded, memories of their early academy days surfacing. Well, at some point along the way, I realized just what that would entail. Random genin with heads too big for their shoulders don't get the hat, he said with a small chuckle. So S rank is a jumping off point? Naruto shrugged. I guess, but it's more of something to strive for in general. Being Hokage isn't top on priority list these days. I figure if I set the bar high enough, I'll get further than someone who just dreams of being an average jonin. Ino nodded in acceptance. It wasn't a bad idea. She was somewhat surprised to hear such mature thoughts coming from her sometimes, read most of the time, goof of a teammate. The boy could certainly be a mystery. A girl likes a guy with a little mystery, Ino thought with a concealed smirk. She wasn't lying either. The mystery surrounding Sasuke had been the kickstart of her ill-fated crush on the boy. She had moved on to more important things these days, however. Like actually being a kunoichi. Asuma had seen to that. I notice you don't ask me about Sasuke so much anymore. Speak of the devil and he shall appear, in conversation. Ino shrugged, a bit uncomfortable with the change in topic regardless of the fact that she had been thinking about it of her own accord. And that's a bad thing? I thought you didn't like it when I did that. Naruto nodded. True. I'm just wondering what happened, that's all. You over him or something? He asked casually. Ino was having none of that. She tossed him the best salacious smirk she could manage. Oh? Why? You interested perhaps? Naruto coughed and sputtered as he tried to formulate an answer. A nearly unbearable heat rose to his cheeks and Naruto inwardly cursed himself for blushing. What, no, he began before noticing Ino's storming expression. That's not to say that you're ugly or anything, Ino, he quickly backpedaled. The girl in question just sat there contentedly, enjoying watching the boy make a fool of himself. He really was too cute at times. Well, He trailed off lamely. He shook himself and eyed Ino from across the table. Maybe I should just go. Yeah, that's a good idea. Ino nodded absently at him. Her blank expression gave him pause, and a blush rose to his face once more. Well, by then, he said as he made his undignified exit. Bye, Naruto, she chirped, delighting in his haste to get out of the restaurant. Only once he was away did she let herself laugh at his expense. That was just too easy, she thought happily. She would have to make a habit of making him uncomfortable like that. Her eyes followed Naruto out the door of the restaurant, and her thoughts turned back to their conversation. She really had all but moved on from Sasuke. Asuma had taken a sadistic pleasure in disabusing her of all the thoughts she had about the myopic boy. It had been hard to see him in the same light when all his faults had been laid out in front of her so casually. Her opinion had been forcefully re-evaluated. It was pretty easy to see, now that she chose to, that Sasuke was far from the tragic prince that he had seen back in the academy. Sure, he had a troubled past, far more troubled than most ninja, but that didn't really excuse his almost verbally abusive behavior towards so many people. Hell, even Naruto called him a bastard, and he was Sasuke's only real friend, as far as Ino knew. The blonde girl shook herself as she placed the meal on Asuma's tab. He frequented the grilling establishment quite a bit. It wouldn't do to dwell on Sasuke anymore. She had far more important things to think about, like being a true kunoichi, and maybe a certain blonde teammate who was just too much fun to tease. Naruto tilted his head to the side calmly. It wouldn't do to lose his cool here. He'd lose his head if he did. The whoosh of air greeted him as he ducked under a second slash. The form was good. It was clean, efficient, and deadly. He'd likely compliment the girl on her skill if he wasn't in such a precarious position. He twisted his body acrobatically to avoid being sliced, and used the gathered momentum to bring his kunai around in a horizontal sweep at the girl's eye level. It was blocked easily, but that was the beauty of having two kunai. The second blade impacted the tanto, halting the first, and the short blade gave way. The girl pulled back and ducked under Naruto's follow-up kick. His sandal had just missed her face. Naruto landed gracefully and pushed off. His right kunai came up in a cross slash at the girl's face. She dodged it. It would have been perfect had he been using wind chakra, he thought. As it was, he was barely resisting the temptation to bring his element into the fight. The idea of wrapping his kunai in deadly futon chakra was tantalizing. If only it wasn't forbidden. Bloody restrictions. It evened the playing field, in any event. He had little doubt that Ino's tanto wouldn't last long against the wild nature of the wind. If only the girl wasn't quite so good with it. He blocked an overhead slash with both kunai, and used his position on one knee to leverage his throw. Ino righted herself in midair with a small application of chakra, and landed gracefully. Naruto was on her before her second foot touched the ground. He struck out in a series of lightning-fast slashes, keeping his arms close to his body. They were like punches, in a way, and Naruto wanted to lessen the effect of the girl's blade by getting in close. It worked well. Her blade occupied by one of Naruto's kunai, it was easily knocked out of her grip by the second of Naruto's weapons. The blonde girl recovered quickly, and struck out with her own kunai almost faster than Naruto could track. She had gotten good. He barely blocked with the tip of his left blade, and redirected the stab just past his left shoulder. He turned defense into offense, and used Ino's off-balance state to utilize a bit of Tai Chi. Cerulean Netsi Blua's skin was a hair's breadth apart, before Naruto was spinning past and Ino was sailing through the air. The girl glared as she righted herself. Naruto grinned. He was upon her as fast as the eye could blink, but the first strike was deftly caught. She leaned back to avoid the second one, but Naruto used his weight to pull her into him. Her breath caught as she was pushed into his chest, the developing muscles not being a great cushion. It has its own upside, she decided. She was on the ground just as quickly, a kunai at her throat. Naruto's devilish smirk was reflected on the face of his fellow blonde as the girl disappeared in a burst of leaves. "I win, Naruto-kun," Ino breathed into his ear. The girl's heated pants were in sharp contrast to the icy cold of the tanto at his neck. The boy barely repressed a shiver at the sensation. God damn it. He was a hormonal 12-year-old in puberty. The feel of her breath on his ear and neck did things to him that he didn't want to think about. It didn't help that he actually liked the girl. "Do you now?" he asked as he enacted a quick kawarimi, keeping his voice level through force of will alone. His huge chakra reserves easily displaced her own, and Naruto swiftly found himself on top. His kunai found its way to the girl's flawless skin. "I think that I win." "Didn't know you liked this position, Naruto-kun," Ino spoke. Her voice was slightly muffled from her face being face down in the grass. "I didn't think you liked to play rough." Naruto snorted, though he blushed to the tips of his hair. He was glad Ino's face was on the ground. It would only provide her with more teasing material. "Hardly, Ino." He let her up. He was used to her perpetual teasing. Mostly. She had started almost 2 months ago, and there was little Naruto could do but grin and bear it. He even retaliated occasionally. "Ah." She pouted cutely as she brushed the dirt off her clothes. She gave him a sultry look. "Done already?" "That's too bad, a girl appreciates a guy with a little stamina." The look was positively vampish. Naruto locked eyes with her. "I wouldn't worry about it," he said while turning away. "There's plenty left in the tank," he tossed over his shoulder. "Oh." She was positively cooing now. Her breath was suddenly on his ear again. How did she get so close? "That sounds promising." Her words were melting in his right ear. He shivered. She chuckled throatily. She knew exactly what she was doing to him. "Tell me, Naruto-kun, can you take my breath away?" She didn't wait for his answer as she sashayed away, her hips swaying pleasantly. Naruto shook his head at her antics. So undignified, he thought with annoyance. It was almost humiliating, the effect the girl could have on him. Their little flirt sessions had become normal in the past 2 months. If not for the fact that Ino did it outside of training, he would have thought that Asuma had gotten her to do it as some sort of bizarre training against seduction specialists. His personal comfort was pretty far down on the Jonan's priority list. It was downright annoying most of the time. It didn't help that his attraction to the girl simply added to the overall effect she had on him. That just made it more annoying. It would have been fine if he wasn't 110% sure that she was still fixated on Sasuke. Someone didn't just get over a crush that fast. As it was, it felt like she was leading him on, and that just wasn't right. There was little he could do about it though. She wasn't about to stop, and a small, masochistic part of him didn't want her to. He actually enjoyed spending time around the girl. They were remarkably similar in nature. Both were loud, somewhat obnoxious when it suited them, and each could get serious when it mattered. He had taken to hanging out with Ino whenever he could, outside of the regular team activities, and was more than a little pleased that she stopped bugging him about Sasuke so much. "Ah, I see you two finished," Asuma drawled from his position against a tree. Kiba was nearby, licking his wounds from his spar with the Jonin. Akamaru yipped when the two genin made their presence known. "And I won, sensei," Naruto piped up before Ino could add her own commentary. The girl stuck her tongue out at him. "You look like you want to say something, Ino." Asuma was amused. His voice betrayed him, though he tried to keep his face schooled in neutrality. Ino caught Naruto's eye and scowled. "Nothing, sensei." Naruto grinned. "The ninja who complains is a dead one." The girl had let her guard down at a critical moment, and it cost her. It was unlikely that she would make the same mistake again. Asuma raised an eyebrow at the small byplay, but let it slide. They were mature enough to handle their own problems. "Alrighty then. If we're all in good enough shape, I think we'll ask the Hokage for a C-ranked mission today." He gazed at his three students, gauging their reactions. "That is, if you all feel up to it." Ino raised her head determinedly. She wasn't about to back down at the prospect of a C-rank mission. She was still fresh, despite the spar she had just finished. Even if she wasn't, she likely wouldn't have backed down. "Hell yeah, Asuma-sensei. Me and Akamaru are ready to go." Kiba's answer wasn't hard to interpret. Akamaru's barking just added to the cacophony of noise his partner was making. Asuma's eyes met Naruto. The blonde raised an eyebrow. "Is that a question?" His sensei just chuckled. He hadn't thought for a second that Naruto would deny the opportunity for a C-ranked mission. He didn't think the others would have either. It wasn't in their nature. "Well then, shall we?" He strolled out of the clearing, puffing on his cigarette casually. His students followed in his wake with excitement. It wasn't their first C-rank, it would be their fifth, but the prospect of leaving the village for a mission was always exciting for the young genin. Naruto scowled from between his teammates as Ino bumped hips with him. Again. He was sure that it was to make up for the way he had won their little spar. The girl delighted in making him uncomfortable, in any event, and Naruto was developing an immunity to her games. It was coming along far too slowly for his liking. The threesome made idle conversation as they passed through the village. There wasn't all that much going on in the village, and they all had the same friends for the most part. The chatting revolved mostly around those who didn't graduate the academy, or were in the reserve corps. Ino, especially, had many friends in the reserve corps. It's really annoying, too. Their training hours are almost longer than ours, most of the time. And that doesn't even include the time spent in class, Ino grumbled. They need the extra training, Kiba pointed out. Those scrubs need all the extra attention they can get. Naruto snorted at Kiba's eloquence. Ino shrugged delicately. Maybe, but I feel like they're avoiding me a lot of the time. I see a bunch of them running around the village on their off hours, but they never want to hang out anymore. Naruto sighed as Ino's insecurities were brought to the fore. He hung around with the blonde girl on a regular basis, so he became the sounding board that she talked to more often than not. Most of her friends that didn't graduate the academy were downright jealous and hostile to the pretty girl, and it looked like the ones in the reserves were starting to follow. She had been the most popular girl in the academy by far. Seeing so many of her friends leave her out of jealousy wasn't an easy experience for the blonde. Bah, they probably just don't want to hang around such an obnoxious girl like you anyway, Naruto quipped. He held back his smirk as Ino's expression grew progressively darker. Loud, annoying, pretty perverted too, right? He asked Kiba playfully. The dog boy nodded with a feral grin. Baka! Ino screamed at him. I'm not a pervert. Could have fooled me. You seemed pretty excited back in the training ground, or was I imagining things? Asuma and Kiba both chuckled at the girl's incoherent sputtering. He mentally patted himself on the back for bringing his fellow blonde out of her funk. Ino huffed in annoyance and turned away, hiding her blush from her teammates. The chatter devolved into ideas about what their mission might entail. The team had taken 4 C ranks before this one, and all 4 had been simply escort missions. The most eventful had been their first. They had escorted a merchant to the fire capital and had encountered a bandit troop along the way. The 3 had made their first kills along a dirt road in the wilderness, and Asuma had held an impromptu counseling session for the 3. Well trained they might have been, but they were still children. The first kill was always traumatizing. Naruto perked up as they reached the administrative building. Team 8 was exiting. He wasn't all that familiar with Shino or Hinata, but Chuji had been one of his running buddies back in the academy. Oi, Chuji, he called. He caught the attention of both teams. The boy in question smiled when he saw his blonde friend. Hey, Naruto. What's happening? The genin teams converged in the street. Asuma immediately stuck up a conversation with their jonin, a pretty red-eyed woman. Kiba was doing his best not to be caught staring. Not much, man. Just getting a C-rank mission, Naruto boasted proudly. You? The large boy munched his chips happily. Just got back from our first escort to Otafukugai. Anything happen? Ino interjected, casually leaning against Naruto for reasons unknown. Shoji didn't question the contact, but he looked surprised. So did the rest of the squad. Naruto just brushed it off as her usual antics. Nothing out of the ordinary. The man was nice enough when we got there. He showed us some great restaurants. Naruto chuckled at his friend's obsession with food. I bet you loved that, didn't you? All good back there, Shino, Hinata, he asked, trying to bring the less vocal members of the team into the conversation. Shino stood to the side, observing the rest with his usual stoicism. Hinata had her gaze turned on Ino with an unreadable expression in her white eyes. Shino shook his head without a word, he had always been weird like that. Hinata turned her gaze from Ino and blushed at being addressed. Ayano, we are fine, and Naruto-kekun. How are you, she stuttered. She had always been weird like that too. Naruto thought it odd that the heir to such a large and powerful clan was so timid. "'S all good, I guess," he replied. He scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "I guess we ought to be going, if Kiba's done checking out your sensei, that is." He elbowed the dog ninja in the ribs. Ino smacked the back of his head. Kiba stuck his tongue out at the 2 blondes without a word. It was all par for the course. Naruto missed Hinata's violent glare at Ino's head as he turned to the 2 senseis. "We good, Asuma-sensei?" The smoker nodded, though he seemed annoyed at being dragged away from his conversation. "See ya around, guys," Naruto called. They each responded in kind. "Oh, I bet they're dating," Ino gushed quietly once Asuma had taken the lead into the tower. "Who?" Naruto and Kiba asked simultaneously. "Asuma and Kurenai." I could see it in their body language. Naruto and Kiba exchanged a disbelieving look. "Since when are you good at reading body language?" Kiba asked. "You're not even all that good at anything else." Ino gave him the finger. Call it woman's intuition, dog boy, but I could sense it. Last I checked, Ino, you were still a girl. Don't you need to be a woman to have woman's intuition? Kiba asked snidely. Naruto snorted at the byplay. Ino growled before crossing her arms in a huff. Look sharp, team, Asuma ordered as they reached the mission's office. He put out his cigarette as they entered. The Sandaime glanced up from his mound of paperwork as Team 10 entered the office. Naruto was surprised to see Irika seated next to him. The scarred Chunin looked haggard and worn down by the immense amount of paper in front of him. He perked up as he saw the team of genin. Team 10 reporting for duty, Hokage-sama, Asuma drawled. Naruto noticed that there always seemed to be a lack of respect between his sensei and the Hokage. He wondered at their odd relationship. He knew from his research about Asuma that they were father and son, as well as the man's own admission. Their relationship seemed strained, however. Ah, of course. The Hokage smiled benignly at the genin team. They all looked down and shuffled their feet in the presence of the grandfatherly legend. The old man chuckled at their bashfulness. Will that be another D rank, or are we in the market for a C rank mission today? He asked. A C rank, if you will? Asuma asked stiffly. He never was comfortable in his father's presence. My, that will be your fifth. An impressive record for a rookie squad. Wouldn't you agree, Irika-kun? The scarred man nodded hesitantly. It was his first day in the office and he wasn't so used to being addressed by the Hokage directly. It is. Are you sure they're well prepared, Asuma-san? The concern for his former students was evident. Quite. I'll thank you not to question my teaching ability in the future, Irika-san. They are my soldiers now. Not your students, the Jonin said tersely. The Hokage just chuckled at his son's mood. Now. Irika-kun, why don't you get that mission we set aside earlier? The Chunin looked a little surprised at the request, but complied anyway. The Sandaime flipped open the mission file. Ah, yes. I had originally saved this for Kakashi's squad of genin, but he's late. I don't feel like making the client wait much longer than necessary, you see. It's bad for business, the old man rambled on. Naruto snickered at the image the man projected. Ino and Kiba were far more at ease given the Hokage's friendly behavior. It was easy to be at ease with someone who appeared so eccentric, rather than a real living legend. Naruto knew full well how serious the man could be, given the right situation. He had seen it many times in his youth, not to mention their most recent encounter. Send for Tazuna-san, the elder Sarutobi ordered Irika. It's a standard bodyguard mission. You will be escorting Mr. Tazuna to his home country in the land of waves. The full mission includes a month-long stay in wave country and the overseeing of the completion of Tazuna-san's bridge. He passed the information packet to his son. Asuma gave it a once-over before nodding once, sharply. The door opened behind the trio of genin, and they swiveled to see an old man dressed in working clothes. He had a scraggly beard and was holding a large sake bottle. Where are my super bodyguards? I know I paid for them. And who are these super brats? Here, he grumbled, adjusting his spectacles absent-mindedly. All three genin narrowed their eyes at the man. His breath stank of the cheap rice wine. The Hokage chuckled behind them. These are your bodyguards, Tazuna-san. I assure you that they are quite well trained and prepared, despite their age. Team 10 is one of our foremost genin squads. The man scoffed. Could have fooled me. A shrimpy blonde, a little girl, and some kid playing with his dog. Is this the best you have to offer? The three genin growled at the man who dared insult their skills. Not to mention the slight against the Hokage. The disrespect was ridiculous. They exchanged a look. Some good-natured pranking would have to take place to teach the Kajira a lesson, it seemed. The Hokage seemed used to dealing with difficult clients, however, if his easy smile was any indication. Rest assured, they are quite competent. Even so, my son is their Jonin sensei. Should any trouble arise that they cannot handle, he will be more than capable. Asuma raised an eyebrow at the praise, but said nothing. The old man huffed. If you say so, Hokage. I just thought I'd get a team of super ninja for my money. If you were willing to pay a higher price, I would happily assign you a team of chunin. Would that satisfy you, Tazuna-san? The sandame asked pleasantly. The bridge builder looked nervous for a moment, but collected himself. No. That won't be necessary. In that case, I bid you a safe journey. Clothes were rolled, weapons were stacked and ordered, and utilities were neatly arranged on Naruto's bed. He wondered how he was going to fit them all into his pack. The answer came to him like a slap in the face. Storage scrolls. He really was an idiot sometimes. 5 minutes and 4 storage scrolls later, the bed was free of all clutter. He was set to meet his team in half an hour at the west gate. He'd indulge himself for the time being. 1 cup of boiling water and 3 minutes later, the blonde was grinning around his instant ramen. Life was good with the best food in the world. He considered his position as he munched on his favorite food. The team was progressing nicely. He, Kiba, and Ino had developed a solid rapport and camaraderie, with Asuma as their leader. He had always had a few friends at the academy, but they never had quite the connection that he and his teammates possessed. Not even Sasuke. He supposed it was natural. Team 10 was like a family in certain ways. A highly dysfunctional family, but a family nonetheless. Asuma especially, had come to play a major role in Naruto's life. The man had taken a keen interest in the boy's development, as well as a more personal interest in the young blonde. The man had made himself available to the blonde whenever it was necessary. While Naruto liked to deal with his own problems, it was nice to have someone to talk to about them. Naruto blinked as his internal clock told him it was time to leave. Being late wasn't one habit he wanted to develop. That was doubly so given the more volatile client he was currently employed by. The blonde briefly weighed the pros and cons of showing up late, before deciding that pissing off Tazuna wouldn't be worth the ration of crap his team would give him. He needn't have worried. Apparently Kiba and Ino had had his same idea, though they chose to act upon it. Tazuna looked pissed after 15 minutes. Asuma was barely containing his amusement. "You're late," he said in a passing imitation of annoyance. "Sorry, sensei." Kiba couldn't have been more contrite looking. "I apologize, sensei. An old lady was crossing the street in front of me and I stopped to help like a proper kunoichi." Ino bowed low to conceal what Naruto knew was a smile. He was impressed. Apparently he wasn't the only one who had heard about Hatake Kakashi's legendary excuses. An honorable reason. Apology accepted, Asuma declared in a solemn tone. He was a good actor. Tazuna was gaping at the sight. The Jonin regarded their client. "If you are ready, Tazuna-san, we can be off." The drunken bridge builder just nodded, grumbling under his breath about stupid brats. Naruto gave his teammates discreet low fives. It wasn't bad for now, but he would have to come up with some more suitable punishment for the insults he threw them earlier. Nobody fucked with his clique. Asuma spared the gate guards, a pair of bored-looking chunin, a wave as he led the troop out at a sedate pace. Naruto groaned as he realized that they would have to walk for Tazuna's sake. The travel time would make this mission last even longer. It was just what he needed, more time around a volatile and disrespectful drunk. He'd likely end up killing the man before the mission ended. He caught Ino's gaze. It wasn't hard. She was kind of staring at him. They exchanged a look of mutual trepidation. This mission was going to suck. The group moved westward along the dirt road. The 3 genin made idle conversation amongst themselves, but it was stagnate. There was no denying the boredom. Naruto even took to glancing at the trees and animals along the side of the road for amusement. At least Akamaru was having fun. Kiba had let his dog go to chase chipmunks down the path. "Are there any ninja in your country, Tazuna-san?" Ino asked, mostly out of boredom than any real interest. Of course there weren't any ninja in Wave, he would have hired them, rather than Konoha shinobi. The old man seemed surprised at being addressed by the girl, but answered, "No. I would have hired them if there were. A super bridge builder like me deserves a super ninja escort, so I came to Konoha," the man proclaimed proudly. Wasn't he griping about us being super brats not too long ago? Kiba asked Naruto under his breath. Naruto choked out a laugh. He replied in a passable imitation of Sasuke's disinterest. Kiba scowled at him for the reply. Asuma was giving Ino a lesson on the various satellite nations who patronized Konoha with their business for missions. Wave, like River Country and Tea Country, all come to Konoha for their missions. It's why reputation is such a huge deal in the shinobi world. If people think that we can't get the job done properly, they'll go somewhere else for business. That's not good for us, obviously, he summed up. Ino nodded absently. She had been the second best academic student in their graduating class. She knew all of that already, and Asuma was well aware of that fact. It was a testament to how bored they all were that the unnecessary conversation actually happened. They continued on. Naruto was getting increasingly more agitated with their client. Once he had satisfied his need to grumble incoherently, he started in on Naruto. The boy had the unfortunate fate to be walking closest to the man. "You're a bit short to be a super ninja, aren't you, kid?" Tazuna asked. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He wasn't really that short. He was average height for his age, standing at 5'1". He was just around taller people more often than not. Tazuna was one of those people. Ino, Kiba, and Asuma all palmed their foreheads. Here we go, they thought. You'll find, Tazuna-san, that size doesn't matter all that much, he began, launching into a full-blown speech, eyes closed and hands behind his head in relaxation. He flipped Kiba the bird over his shoulder at the boy's snort. Having a compact form can be helpful in many situations. For example, in close combat, my shorter limbs give me an advantage over my taller counterparts. Whereas their more sweeping attacks are rendered useless by my proximity, I have a full range of motion. Naruto was on a roll. It was well-prepared and executed defense. Similarly, in long-distance engagements, my smaller form is a more difficult target for all but the most accurate of shinobi. Shortness of stature can also translate to speed. It does in my case. His team shook their heads collectively as Naruto rambled on about the merits of being short. They had all heard it before. Many times. They had learned not to insult the boy's height, not if they didn't want to be bored to death. He always seemed to come up with new material as well. Tazuna just nodded his head continually as the boy delivered his long-winded spiel. Yeah. He finally drawled, I just don't see it. Naruto scowled fiercely at the muffled laughter of his teammates. The man had insulted his skills, his team, and now his height. He happily switched places with Ino before he caused an incident. You think it would be so horrible for our reputation if he was killed? In an accident, that is. Never can be too careful with bandits in the area, he mumbled to Kiba and Asuma. Ah, did he hit a sore spot with your height, Naruto? Kiba ribbed him. The blonde just snorted haughtily. Just you wait. You can bet your ass he'll insult Akamaru at some point. Then what, dog boy? Kiba just shrugged. My clan would understand if something were to happen. Naruto just snorted and pulled out one of his guides on elemental manipulation. The leaf and water splitting exercises had been completed recently, and he was finally able to channel some futon chakra. It had only taken him 3 months. Asuma had given him a few basic wind techniques to learn, and the blonde was happy with his progress. He now had 2 futon jutsu to add to his meager collection of ninjutsu, bringing his total up to 4. Futon, Diatapa and Futon, Repushu had been easy enough for the blonde to learn. They required little focus and precision, and were basic techniques to be known by futon users. The lack of control needed helped Naruto immensely, his chakra control still not being his strong point. It was downright frustrating. The more he did chakra control exercises, the more chakra he developed. More to burn, he reasoned. The Rankuten, on the other hand, required an intricate formation and manipulation of the wild wind chakra. It made the C-rank ninjutsu harder to master and control, but that much more deadly. He was still working on that one. His work with wrapping the futon chakra around his weapons had come surprisingly easily to the blonde. He had to fight the urge to feel the rush of wind during his spars with his teammates. Unrefined though his manipulation was, it could still deal plenty of damage. He was moving on to Doton manipulation. It seemed the natural step to take after he had the basics of his true affinity down. He had already plowed through 2 earth techniques without knowing the proper way to mold and guide the chakra. He hoped that the knowledge in the elemental scroll would make using the techniques more chakra efficient. His mind retreated to the present as Kiba nudged him in the side. "What's up, dog boy?" "Seriously, man, you've got to shower more," the Inuzuka grumbled. Naruto was on guard immediately. "What the hell do you mean?" He took a whiff of his armpit. "I smell fine, idiot." The boy shook his head, unusually serious. "Not to this nose. You might as well have just jumped in a sewer." Naruto swatted at the back of Kiba's head. "Bah, you don't know what you're talking about, mutt." He coughed lightly as a glob of saliva got lodged in his windpipe. He spit it in a nearby puddle he passed. "Fucking scrubs." The team continued on in relative peace, Ino and Asuma snickering at the byplay between the two boys. Tazuna just sipped more of his sake and glanced about shiftily. The sound of displaced water brought a smirk to Naruto's face, and he turned just in time to see Asuma ripped to shreds by 2 masked men in rusted armor. The sight of his sensei's demise froze him for a second, but he regained his senses after his eyes picked up the shredded form of a log. "Nice one, sensei." The smirk returned. "Look sharp, Ino, Kiba," he called as the 2 masked and armored men charged him. "One down," the chain-wielding duo snarled. Naruto hit the ground as the duo approached, and watched a brace of shuriken fly toward the men courtesy of Ino. A slight disruption of chakra alerted him to a genjutsu being placed, and he turned to see Ino and Tazuna disappearing in a haze. Perfect. The shuriken hadn't hit their target, but had successfully separated the 2 men, who had detached their chain into 2 parts in order to avoid the incoming weapons. Naruto and Kiba took the initiative. Almost faster than the eye could blink, Naruto palmed 2 kunai. The wind howled behind him as the knives were enveloped in wind chakra. He fell to his knees and slid under a chain swipe at his neck. A deft flick of the wrist sent one of his kunai flying to intercept the chain closer to the masked man, and the wind-enhanced blade split the weapon with ease. The man cursed as more than half of his chain hit the ground, utterly useless. He recovered quickly, however, and sent 3 shuriken racing toward Naruto, who deflected them with his own throwing stars. Drawing 3 kunai, he flicked them toward the masked man before following with a seal sequence. The wind roared in the unannounced futon. Repashu propelled the throwing knives at triple their normal speed. The man was quick, and managed to avoid all but one of the enhanced knives, which pierced his unarmored left shoulder. His scream of pain as the blade tore through him was music to Naruto's ears. The momentary distraction was all the time Naruto needed. The boy put on a burst of speed as he approached the armored assailant, and delivered a devastating drop kick to the man's rebreather. The heavy metal crunched into the man's face and made a series of jagged, painful lacerations. The scream was muffled as blood spurted out from underneath the metal. A newly palmed kunai was in an ice pick grip and thrust into the man's skull with Naruto's accompanying roar of triumph. He moved on before the body hit the ground, his kill already forgotten in the rush of battle. He paid little mind to the blood on his hands as he scanned his surroundings. Noticing Kiba struggling with his opponent, Naruto momentarily disengaged his resistance seals. The unsuspecting man was swept off his feet by a charging Naruto, before he was ruthlessly plowed into the ground by a rapidly spinning Kiba. "Suga," the feral boy screamed. Naruto spun his remaining knife around his finger as he approached the groaning form. The man was playing possum, however, and his clawed hand shot out to stab Naruto's chest. The boy brought his kunai to bear, but it proved unnecessary as an invisible blade of wind neatly sliced the metal gauntlet off at the hand, blood covering Naruto as it gushed out. Naruto smiled at the familiar form of his sensei while his attacker screamed in pain. "I take it you had a reason," he stated more than asked, sweeping the blood off his clothes with disinterest. "Of course," was the given answer. He said nothing else as he picked the man up by the back of his neck and placed him, none too gently, against a tree. Naruto walked over to Kiba and Ino, who had dropped her cloaking genjutsu. The girl gave him an appraising once-over. "You all right?" she asked gruffly. Naruto smiled at the hidden note of concern. "Course, Ino-chan. Scrubs like that don't have nothing on me," he proclaimed proudly. He puffed his chest out. The girl shook her head in exasperation as she playfully hit him in the chest, disregarding the blood still there. "Idiot," was all she said, though she smiled fondly at him. Naruto laughed at her reaction. He always enjoyed some fake posturing. "How about you, Kiba?" "As if I would be any worse. I didn't even need Akamaru for that scrub." Ino slapped the back of his head. "As if. I saw you getting run over until Naruto gave you an opening, baka. Stop trying to sound so cool." Naruto chuckled heartily at the byplay, and Kiba and Ino joined in soon after. Sharing a good laugh after a life-or-death situation always served to diffuse the tension. They had learned that after their first kills. They had made a note to do it after every incident they were involved in. Tazuna watched the team's interactions with an eye filled with trepidation. He had just seen two of his bodyguards, children, no less, deal with his attackers in a spectacular fashion. After their sensei had been torn to shreds. The blonde one had even killed one of them. And now they were laughing about the whole thing like they hadn't just been lethally attacked. He shook his head as his hands shook involuntarily. This ninja business was scary. He took a hearty swig of his sake, silently lamenting his small stock he had brought with him. Naruto noticed their client's look. He smirked devilishly. "Aren't you glad you hired us, Tazuna-san? There's no telling what might have happened if we hadn't been here, right?" The man just nodded quickly. Naruto could just sense the fear rolling off him. He found that he liked the thought of the man fearing him. It showed respect for his skills. His triumph over his civilian client was interrupted by Asuma's hand on the drunk's shoulder. His expression was stormy as he regarded their client. "Tazuna-san, we have to talk." The man stuttered and sputtered as Asuma hit him with a small dose of killing intent. "What's the PP problem?" he asked nervously. "You are, unfortunately." The killing intent abruptly vanished. Naruto made note of the technique. By giving the civilian a small dose of what he could do, Asuma would likely never have to consciously intimidate the man again. "What do you mean?" Tazuna had regained some of his capacities, what little of them there were to begin with. "I mean that, after I was killed, I saw my two attackers racing toward you," Asuma said with severity. "Now, those two were Chunin Nuknin from Kirigakure no Sato. I would understand if they were after me. I have a nice-sized bounty on my head. But they weren't. Why, exactly, would two C-ranked missing nin be after you, Tazuna-san?" The bridge builder visibly wilted at the verbal dressing down. "We weren't informed of there being ninja after you, Tazuna-san. This mission is at least a B rank right now, possibly higher. We need to know what we're getting into." "Sensei," Naruto spoke. "If this mission has been upgraded to B rank, we should return to the village." He let Kiba's and Ino's immediate protests wash over him. Did they not think his pride was stinging from this? If these two were Chunin rank, we can assume that a Jonin would be our next opponent. He left the statement hanging. He was confident in his skills, but he knew that he couldn't take a Jonin. There was no doubt in his mind that Asuma was very skilled. He had done his research on the man, but he would be hamstrung by both protecting Tazuna and his team. It was those subtle details that often decided ninja battles. His pride might have been hurt from visibly backing down, but he had no desire to see Asuma or his teammates in a lethal and uncontrollable situation. A smart shinobi knows when retreat is the best option, he consoled himself. Asuma was visibly stunned. Of all his team, he had expected the bold and somewhat headstrong Naruto to be the last to back down. He's more mature than I thought. He was impressed. Wait! Tazuna yelled. Sensei, Asuma-san, it's true that this mission is likely outside of your duties. He seemed to shrink inside himself. The truth is, I have a super dangerous man after me. Super dangerous? Ino asked. Tazuna nodded quickly. Yeah, you might have heard of him. Gatu. Asuma's eyebrows were in danger of taking flight. The shipping magnate? He's one of the richest men in the world, what could he possibly want with you? Tazuna leaned against a nearby tree as he began his tale. That he is, but there's an underbelly to his business. He traffics drugs and other illegal materials using his business and hired shinobi. He even uses ninja and gang members to take over other businesses and even countries. What a piece of work, Naruto thought harshly. Whether it was directed at Gatu or their sniveling client was unclear. About a year ago, Tazuna continued. He set his sights on Wave Country. I'm not sure why, but it probably has to do with Wave's proximity to the ocean, along with the fishing business. Anyway, he managed to completely take over Wave's economy through the shipping business. All he has to fear is my completing of the bridge. Asuma nodded in thought. Your bridge will destroy his monopoly over Wave's economy, thus limiting his influence. The trio of genin all nodded in understanding of the situation. Why would you hide from us, though? Naruto questioned, curiosity overriding his anger at the man. There were shinobi after you, you should have gotten a more expensive mission, with more experienced bodyguards. Tazuna dropped his head. Wave Country is super poor. Not even the daimyo has any real money anymore. Gatu's drained it all. No one has enough money for a more expensive B-rank mission. Even so, Asuma interjected. The Hokage would have understood your plight. It wouldn't have been much trouble to loan you the money necessary for the mission. You could have paid it back at a later date. Tazuna looked surprised at the thought, and then wilted once more. I understand your reluctance. If you choose to end the mission now, my life is forfeit. Naruto sighed at the obvious guilt trip the man was trying. But don't worry about it. If I die, my super cute grandson will only cry for a few days. Oh yeah, and my daughter will just hate Leaf Ninja for the rest of her life. But it won't be your fault, he finished with a smile so fake it was painful to watch. He can't be serious, Naruto thought with a deadpan expression. Unfortunately, he was, and it was working. Sensei, I don't know about you, but I want to complete the mission, Kiba declared. I may not like the guy, but I won't let him and his family suffer. It was a surprising declaration. It was most likely the boy's pride talking, but he made it sound good at least. That goes for me too, Asuma-sensei, Ino said. Her eyes bored into Naruto's, as if daring to disagree with her. He met the gaze with his own, trying his best to get her to back down without resorting to actual words. The Jonin nodded at his team's declarations. Looks like you've been outvoted, Naruto. The blonde boy nodded in resignation. Thankfully, I'm still team captain, and my decision is the only one that counts. Naruto perked up again. Then we're going home, he asked hopefully. Neither his teammates nor the sob story had persuaded him. Asuma sighed. No, we'll complete the mission. But, I'll place a note for the ANBU for when they retrieve the bodies. Proper backup will be arranged and sent. Naruto nodded his acceptance, though reluctantly. He wasn't happy, and he had a bad feeling about the mission as a whole, but he'd abide by his superior's decision. He knew better than to try to change his sensei's mind. Asuma retrieved a scroll from inside his Jonin vest, and swiped some blood on it. A small, mechanical bird popped out in a burst of smoke. One quick scribble later, and the yellow mechanical bird was in flight toward Konoha. Well then, good work team. Your response to an outward threat of shinobi was well timed and executed. Asuma gave the three 12-year-olds a proud smile. They had worked well together. We'll go over the ins and outs of your performance when we reach Wave Country. All three genin puffed up proudly. Their hard work was paying off. Now, Tazuna-san, I would hope that you would be willing to move a little bit faster. In the interest of safety, of course. The bridge builder acquiesced without so much as a grumble. He realized what position he had placed the team in, and wasn't willing to push his luck any further than he had. While the team restocked, Naruto jogged around the clearing to pick up the discarded weapons he had used. He stopped near a tree where his dead opponent was rapidly cooling. He blinked as the memories from the fight resurfaced. He had barely noticed when he stabbed the man in the head. Unbidden, the memory of Asuma cautioning the team after their fist kills came to mind. The midst of battle is the most dangerous time for a shinobi. I know it sounds obvious, the man continued when his genin gave him looks, but it is that way for more reasons than you might imagine. The training you received at the academy always told you to keep a clear head in a fight. It's harder than it looks. What do you mean, sensei? Ino had asked, her voice shaky. Bloodlust. The whispered answer came from Kiba, surprisingly enough. Asuma gave the boy a nod. Your family? He asked the boy. Kiba nodded. The Inazuka clan is much more in touch with their animalistic side. The concept of bloodlust is far from foreign to them, he explained to the other two puzzled genin. In any event, Kiba is absolutely right, though his answer is incomplete. Bloodlust is just one of the dangers that shinobi face when they enter combat. The smoker lit a cigarette as he sat back on his haunches. There's no real term for it, but as your careers continue, you'll probably notice it as you get older. It happens in the middle of fights, mostly, but a ninja can lose themselves in the battle. It's seen mostly in large-scale battles, but even in the smaller ones, you might notice that the battle ends and you have no real memory of what happened. That's extremely dangerous. While not always the case, it mostly happens when a shinobi completely relies on instinct during a fight. He sighed heavily, taking a calming drag from the cancer stick. You guys are probably the best team I've ever had and I don't want to scare you, but you need to know this. While instinct is all well and good, a clear mind in a fight is always better. You can adapt more quickly if your mind is sharp. Acting on instinct and impulse has gotten many a good ninja killed by not paying proper attention and just reacting. Asuma's brown eyes locked with each of his genins in turn. Don't let it happen to you. I'd hate to have to know one of you ended up dead because you didn't think during a fight. Naruto shook himself to get rid of the memory. He had been lucky that the man hadn't killed him when he hadn't been thinking properly. It was a scary thought, that he could find himself so lost in a fight that he didn't even remember the kill stroke. What might happen next time if he allowed himself to become lost in a fight? He didn't want to think about what might happen. Not only to him, but to anyone he was with at the time. Naruto. Ino called. We're getting out of here, idiot. Hurry up. A disturbed and thoroughly shaken Naruto returned to his team as they moved closer to Wave Country. In the woods surrounding Fire Country, a yellow bird flew through the treetops on its way to Kanahagakure no Sato. Out of sight of the ninjas who had sent it, a thin needle moving at high speed removed it from its flight. Wood splintered and cracked as the projectile pinned the machine to a nearby tree. It would stay there until the needle melted to water, a day later, and it dropped to the ground. No one was around to hear the noise.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.